Hi, my name is Dan Corsi, and I'm going to present to you my assignment on inclusive leadership. Before I show you the first video clip, I'd like to give you a little background on the speaker. I chose a short clip from a presentation given by Dr. Gary Ranker, and he's known as the Global CEO Coach. He was the former Chief Executive Officer of Hallmark Cards and Textron. He's well traveled. He's lived on 4 separate continents. And he currently is traveling almost 500,000 miles each year training his global clients. And he also has a PhD in human and organizational development. Let's take a look at the clip here from Gary Ranker.
In the beginning of leadership, particularly as I personally started observing and then began to have leadership positions myself, I saw that people, there was a lot of command and control. There was a lot of very hierarchical leadership where bosses were expected to know the answers, and people who reported to the bosses were supposed to sort of shut up and do what they were told. When I started managing, I was told very distinctly by some of my American bosses, what you're doing, Gary, in inviting participation in decisions is kind of up to you, but realize you're next on the line, and you don't really have to be involving people because most of us don't. You're the boss. You just, do it. Tell people what to do. And so I was kind of acting revolutionary, but this evolution of management towards a more global mindset of management that I see is that ability that has occurred over time to invite participation and to invite not just participation in decisions from people who are perhaps from the country of origin of the company, but rather to begin recognizing that talent is global. That sort of, to me, that ability, in other words, the common thread here about global mindset, to me, is the ability to get outside of your own skin, to be able to look through someone else's eyes, whether you're a company or you're a person or you're looking at leadership.
Okay. All right. So I think what stuck out to me the most about that short clip was that he embraces input from all various people, different people on a global scale. Which as a global business leader himself, that was probably a big part of his success. But relating it into a school or an educational setting, there's a great diversity of people that that are part of that school. And I think oftentimes educational leaders fail to really embrace the thoughts and opinions of all of those people, and perhaps are only looking to other administrators or district leaders for advice or for input. And I think there's a lot of talent there at the school in different capacities that can be utilized. He mentions here that an inclusive leader recognizes that talent is global, and I think that's part of, like I said, that principle, that educational leader being able to tap into the resources that are available to them within that school. Then he makes 2 statements there right towards the end about getting outside of your own skin, and I think for me, I think that is important because in my experience working in different schools, I've worked with different principals, and I felt like oftentimes they were a little hesitant to share, self-disclose some information about themselves, just, professional stuff, but yet to help people get to know them on a personal level, and then, working that working both ways. And so I always felt like I never really got to know the principals I worked for on a more than just, for business matters. And I think that would have helped the relationship there. Not that it was bad, but I think in general people like to be able to relate to their leader, and I think as a leader it's important that you in turn can relate to those folks in the organization. And then he mentions here looking through someone else's eyes, and I think the question here is, for me, if you're an educational leader and you could step out of that role and look from the side of the say the staff at that school, would you be that person that you'd want to follow? So are you doing what you'd want to be done if you were the principal? And I think that's a great question to ask yourself if you're in that situation. Okay. The next leader I chose is Herb Kelleher, and I was first introduced to Herb Kelleher about 15 years ago during my undergraduate work, and I've been fascinated with him ever since. And I just wanted to share a few pieces of information that I just recently learned about him through this assignment. But I didn't know that he has a law degree and that he practiced law in New Jersey and Texas. His initial capacity with Southwest was their attorney, and he purchased a very small stake in the company in the early 1970s, and then later in 1982 was asked to be the CEO of Southwest Airlines. And before I show you the video clip, I did stumble across this quote here, and it's actually from his mother. And in the article that I was using to research him, he mentions that he had received a lot of his leadership training and skills from his mother. And this was a quote from his mother, and it says here, "Judge on merit rather than appearance." And that really stuck out to me, especially when we're discussing inclusive leadership, because I think it's easy for a lot of people to, associate with people who are like them. And it's easy to judge a person based on their appearance, whether you really mean to or not. Stereotypes and biases are present. And I think the more we can work towards, evaluating and judging a person on their character, on their merit, I think is going to, significantly improve one's leadership capabilities. So let's take a look at Herb Kelleher's video clip here.
The business of business is people. Yesterday, today, and forever. And as among employees, shareholders, and customers, we decided that our internal customers, our employees, came first. The synergy, in our opinion, is simple. Honor, respect, care for, protect, and reward your employees, regardless of title or position. And in turn, they will treat each other and their external customers in a warm, in a caring, and in a hospitable way. This causes external customers to return, thus bringing joy to shareholders.
Okay, so the very title of his presentation is "The Business of Business is People," and I think that right there really helps to, really helps to show you what his philosophy really is, and that is that the employees come first. And then I just quoted his statement in there about how important it is. The key is to honor, respect, care for, and protect, and reward your employees. And then he really emphasizes this last part of the statement, regardless of their title or position. And I think this is what relates to inclusive leadership the most, in that regardless of that person's role in the organization. So if we were talking about a school, it could be anybody from a teacher's aide, a custodian, cafeteria staff, another administrator, whatever the case might be, they all deserve respect, care, protection, reward, and I think that was very important, and it's evident if you read more about Herb Kelleher and how he was at Southwest Airlines. That was very evident in his actions. And I think it's also important to note here that he believes in the result of doing that, of treating each other, the result of treating employees really well is that they will in turn treat others well, which includes external customers. So if we were going to relate this into an educational setting, I would call the external customers the students and perhaps the parents. And I think that's very important in boosting teacher effectiveness, where traditionally training and assessments are different ways that the different approaches that have been made to improve teacher effectiveness. In the schools that I've been in, teacher morale sometimes was fairly low, and teachers can get bogged down with a lot of training and assessments. And so I think sometimes this might be an area that can be focused on and perhaps improve teacher effectiveness. And of course, the idea here is student outcomes as well. So, okay, on to part 2 of the assignment. We're going to take a deeper look at how inclusive leadership can be applied in education. And so an educational leader should value the opinions of all school stakeholders. So whether it's an administrator, a parent, a student, any staff member, their opinions should be sought after and valued. Is the educational leader committed to celebrating diversity within the school community? So does the school celebrate cultural holidays? Is there cultural decorations present at the school that represent the various cultures within that school community? And then I would ask, is there a curriculum in place that addresses cultural awareness in the classroom? And these last 2 points here have to do with students and parents and their ability to participate in after-school functions. And oftentimes there are students and parents who cannot do things after school, whether it's work or issues with childcare. The problem is that's a very underrepresented group in extracurricular activities because they're usually taking place after school. And so by maybe perhaps adjusting that a little bit, you could get more involvement there as well. All right, 2 things I took from previous research in this course was when I read about situational leadership, co-founded by Ken Blanchard. This kind of stuck out to me and how it relates to inclusive inclusive leadership. In that, in order to be able to model your approach based on what you think that person needs, you need to be able to get to know that person. And sometimes people often find it difficult to get to know people who are of different ethnicities or cultures. And so I think it's very important to, as an educational leader, to be able to relate to those different people and be able to best tailor your approach when dealing with them. And then here, also servant leadership theory I thought was appropriate. And here I think it's important to train administrators to serve others, and I mean serve the school staff, students, parents as well. And I think that servant type mentality goes a long way in creating a very positive school climate. 3 points here that I picked out from the Leadership Challenge book that I wanted to mention. Early on in the book, there was a quote here, and the quote states, "Their actions are consistent with their words," and they're relating to educational leaders who have credibility. And it's important as a leader to be credible because it shows to the people that you're working with that you care for the success of every person. Modeling the way. To effectively model the way, you must first be clear about your own guiding principles. So this stuck out to me because you yourself, if you're the educational leader, you must be comfortable with diversity. You must understand and value it. And if you do that, then therefore the things that you say and do will show that you do care, and that will that shared vision will spread throughout the organization. And then lastly, just picked out a few things from Chapter 10, Encourage the Heart, about rewarding employees. And I think it's important to personalize the recognition. It takes a little bit more work to do that rather than just to give out the same token of appreciation to everybody. But if you can come up with a way to personalize a reward, and I think that makes it even more special, I think that people respond much better to that. Okay, here is my summary paragraph on the challenges to implementing inclusive leadership. And I'm just going to paraphrase this very briefly for you. But basically, to implement inclusive leadership takes a significant amount of time. And during that time, you can expect some setbacks, such as staff turnover and reluctance to implementation. I think especially in an educational setting where a union presence is very strong, you may even find it more difficult to implement due to staff reluctance. That's just something that I experienced in my career a little bit with new programs and new things. So again, it's a time thing, and the entire organization has to buy in. And that's the only way to make it successful. So everyone from the top down must buy in, and that can always be a struggle, but it can be done. Okay, and here's my bibliography. I just want to thank you. I enjoyed the course. I enjoyed this assignment. I hope you enjoyed the presentation as much as I did putting it together. Have a nice, enjoy your summer. Thank you.